Welcome to the Digital Insurance and Marketing Podcast. I am Vasu, your host. Michael Bromley started his digital journey 25 years ago, truly one of the early digital pioneers. That digital journey took Michael from US to Canada to Asia and eventually Australia, where he lives today. That journey gave Michael experiences in telecom, financial services, and consumer goods. Michael is no longer in insurance and enjoys the benefit of looking back and reflecting, bringing out some very interesting perspectives. Take a listen.
So it's just kind of funny that the last guest that I spoke to, a lady called Maria, who runs an agency for financial services, studied in Syracuse. And I was thinking, oh, there seems to be the Syracuse thread. I remember you were born in Syracuse, right?
Yeah, I was.
Well, at this pace, I think I need to invite Tom Cruise to be the next guest. Look back at our time working together, and especially all the work we've done on Gojek just before IAG Asia closed down, and then we all had to go our own ways. So thank you for that wonderful, and thank you for getting me into IAG. I wouldn't be here if you hadn't given me that break. So appreciate that.
My pleasure. Hopefully it was good, not bad.
No, it was wonderful. So tell us a little about your unique backstory, Michael. You are an American in Australia. I remember you spent some time in Asia, and how did you end up this part of the world?
Yeah, I ended up here through work like most people do, but I stayed for love like most people do, right? I was working at AOL and back in the US, and as you probably are aware, in about 1996 or so, we acquired Time Warner, and that whole merger led to really drastic changes at AOL. I took a payout and went to work at BlackBerry, which was my top client at the time. I ended up running, again, same kind of thing in telecoms, but really looking at the future and new opportunities. And within 6 months, they asked me to lead Asia Pacific, and they wanted me to do that initially from Canada while commuting from the US. And that just didn't seem like it made a lot of sense. So I put together a small plan and said, hey, I should go out to the region and set up shop and stay there for a couple of years and then come back. And they bought into that strategy. And I remember the CEO saying, where do you think you should be based, Hong Kong or Singapore? And I said, Sydney. And he said, well, that's really far away from a lot of places. I said, everything's far from somewhere. But at the end of the day, it'll be easy to recruit. It won't be tough to get Canadians to move to Sydney from the weather point of view. And it's a far more similar culture to the US and North America than Hong Kong or Singapore would be. So it would be an easier translation. So he bought it. I just wanted to live in Sydney. And long story short, I came out here with 5 people from Canada, from the Canadian operations.
Okay.
Hired a bunch more when I got here. And that's what brought me out to Australia. And 2 years later, when they wanted me to come back, I said no thanks and stayed, and married my wife. And now I've got 2 little Aussie kids on top of my US daughter, who lives in New York. But yeah, I've been here since 2002.
Wow, so you're practically Asian now,
or
an APAC guy.
Yeah.
So how did you enter insurance? It's kind of from where, from just a long jump from BlackBerry telco to insurance, or isn't it?
No, it is. So yeah, how did I get into insurance? I was a consultant working at a small consulting firm here in Sydney, and was doing some work at QBE, in fact, insurance. And while I was doing that engagement, it was I guess we did a pretty good job for QBE in the digital side of things. And at the same time, a former boss of mine was telling me that she was having discussions with IAG. And I was interested in what she was thinking of doing. And ironically, about, I don't know, a couple of days later, I got a headhunter call asking me about a job at IAG. And I thought, okay, this must be what she was talking about. And she probably recommended me. I can't remember now at this point. But long story short, I went and had a chat with CGU business unit guy called Peter Harmer, who ended up becoming the CEO of IAG. So yeah, I ended up in a digital transformation type of role where I don't think they had any idea what I was going to do, and I'm pretty sure I didn't realize how much fun it would be for a couple of solid years. But yeah, I ended up in a place I never thought I would have ended up in my lifetime. Insurance isn't the first thing I would have thought of as a career opportunity, but what's great about what I do, and maybe a little bit about the way I do it, is that I don't really care what industry I'm in or what country I'm in. It's the opportunity to create change and disruption for good and drive new ways of working. That's what excites me. And that opportunity was laid in front of me with a board that was prepared to really change things up, and a leadership team that was, well, at least partially ready to go. So yeah, that's how I ended up in insurance.
Going back to your childhood, do you recollect your first insurance?
When I was 16 and I got a car, living in Connecticut in the US that time, my parents said, we'll buy you the car, but you have to pay for all your fuel and your insurance. And I thought, okay, well, I could probably pay for the fuel. What's this insurance thing? And then I kind of had to do a little bit of a quick crash course on what auto insurance was at the time and what that meant. And yeah, so I was responsible for my own insurance policy. It was on their policy, obviously, but I was responsible for getting the policy and paying for it every month. So that was it. That's how I entered the exciting world of insurance.
Yeah. Back in the day, there wasn't Google. So how did you kind of find out what to do or what to buy?
That's a really good question. I'm sure I just talked to my dad and asked him what I needed to do and what happened. I think at the same time, when you take the driver's test, I think you had to learn a little bit about car insurance, because obviously you can't get a license and drive a car if you don't know what insurance is all about.
Right?
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure I learned a little bit about it through the driver's ed. I took driver's ed in high school, so it was a thing you could do. I don't know if that happens in other parts of the world, but I learned to drive as a high school class, basically. And I'm sure there was classwork as well as driving work. So I'm sure I learned a little bit about them. But I'm sure that at the end of the day, it probably came down to asking my father what I was going to do. Now that I'm kind of on the other side of my insurance career, in many ways, it was a dream opportunity at a dream time. I think we just ran out of a little bit of runway, unfortunately, which probably goes to a question you'll ask me later about the insurance industry. But I had a phenomenal time. I was able to help drive some real meaningful and significant change within an organization that, hadn't changed in decades, and in an industry that's certainly not known for its change and its capability to reinvent itself. But working under Peter and working with a great group of people, yourself included, we were able to really do some things that were different and get people to think very differently about what they were doing. I remember one of the biggest things that I spent time trying to achieve was getting people to think about the value that the organization brought to its customers and its shareholders, and stop thinking about what the preconceived notion of insurance was, and really rethink about how you serve your customer, because customers don't care about insurance. They care about the transaction or the thing that they need to be resolved. And what they care about is that you take care of them. And if that happens to be a policy, great. If it happens to be some other service related to that, that's fine too.
We'll edit
But
that.
just getting the organization to think about servicing customers and creating meaningful experiences rather than, what insurance is supposed to be, because no one cares what insurance is supposed to be, except people who are working in insurance. And unfortunately, that's not your core customer. So yeah, the exciting part about working at IAG at the time was being able to have that freedom to try new things and drive new outcomes, and just change mindsets. And to me, that's the ultimate goal for me is, changing people's mindsets. It's one of the hardest things you can do, but when you do it, it can really shift perspective and really change the game. So yeah, I love my time there.
So any tips and tricks, and how did you kind of get people to come onto your side?
Yeah, look, I can remember very early on when we weren't in the main building at IAG in Sydney in the first few months. We had this office down the street a little bit, and it was just basically a big giant room. And we just put all the work we were doing up on walls, and we took people through for tours, and we brought people in, and we gave them what we called wall walks, which was essentially, the way we were redesigning things, co-creating things with people instead of doing it to them. And giving them a voice, right? Making sure that this was something that was happening with them. And I remember saying many, many times, remember, this isn't something we're doing to you. This is IAG responding to a world that's changing. So, you can sit here and push back all you want, but you're not pushing back on me, because I'm not the one walking in the door saying you should do this. The world is saying you need to do this, and you have to follow suit. And once people get that understanding, once they understand that, it wasn't some consultant, first of all, I was internal. But even if it was, the whole idea isn't that it was somebody doing something to you to change your world. It was participating in that change. And so we invited people through every single day. We gave them sticky notes and Sharpie pens, and anything on the wall that they had a question about or an opinion about or a thought about, they could write down what they were saying, give us their contact information, and we would then bring them into the solution. Instead of just lobbing a grenade at us and saying, this is wrong, they actually had to say, okay, this is wrong, this is why, and this is what you should do about it. And then we would bring them and say, great, help us fix that. And I find that if you bring people along in that way, there's nobody to point a finger at when something goes wrong. So when things go wrong, people just work together to solve a problem. And man, that is such a refreshing change to the traditional sort of politics and culture that you can run into. When people feel things are being done to them, they're going to point fingers at other people and say, this is wrong, it's your fault, whatever. When they're part of the solution, then it's just, hey, how can we make this work better? And boy, that's a lot more fun to work that way. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I think people appreciated it.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful when you get people to kind of see the big picture and then work with you rather than against you. I think the walls that you left behind, right, the Kanban walls, I think it's a legacy that you left behind. I think it's had a major impact on how IAG, changed the way it approached work for getting things done.
Yeah, look, we were lucky enough, we had so much buy-in, we were able to design our working environment. So we designed an entire floor on level 6 in the old building.
And I think you had a contribution to the new building design as well.
Yeah, that's right. We spent a lot of time when they were designing the new space to make sure that we incorporated more of what we were doing on level 6 throughout the whole facility. And to my knowledge, it happened. I ended up not being part of the move because I was gone before then. But yeah, I think the walls are an important piece of transparency and trust, right? So by putting everything in a visible space, a visible system of engagement allows everybody to know what's going on, good, bad, or ugly, and to be able to participate in that. So it also becomes incredibly efficient. So you don't have to have stakeholder meetings. You just look at the wall. You don't have to have stage gates and checkup meetings because you could just look at the wall. You don't have to have reports and status checks because you could just look at the wall. And you didn't have to know who's doing what or ask who's doing what and when, or when this was coming out, what this was due, because you could just look at the wall. And so by doing that, you create this tremendous transparency, and that engenders a lot of trust, right? People then suddenly say, okay, well, I can see everything you're doing. I know what's going on. If it's not on the wall, then I can talk about adding it to the wall. But at the end of the day, I feel like there's things happening and things are progressing, and I can see how it's progressing and where and what's working, what's not, and that's the key. So yeah, those walls are a really important part of bringing people along that journey so that they can be part of the solution instead of seeing something done to them again.
I've experienced the walls firsthand, and I can tell you they did really work. They did make a big difference. So wonderful. In the insurance business, do you think people really understand the difference between IT and digital?
I don't think people understand the difference between IT and digital anywhere, let alone the insurance business. Yeah, and it's a funny thing. My wife makes fun of me every time I use the word digital because it's a stupid thing, right? Digital just means digits. And that just really just means numbers, because people used to count on their fingers, and how that suddenly turned into this complex world of technology and sophistication is beyond me. But the truth of the matter is, digital is a mindset, and technology is a bunch of tools and techniques, and they're very different, right? Digital is a way of thinking, attacking, and solving problems, and the technology that you use is just one of the enablers, one of many enablers to creating a digital environment. And that those enablers can be methods and tools and process. It could be approaches and mindsets. It could be design. It could be infrastructure. It could be architecture, and it can be technology and tools. It could be all of those things. And it's easy to put your hands on and identify what is technology. It's a little harder to sort of do the same thing with what is digital. And I find that the problem with that question is that it's really the wrong question to ask, right? Who cares what digital is? Because whatever digital is today, it's going to be something different tomorrow, right? It's now really all about AI, machine learning, natural language processing,
Absolutely.
Things like that. But 2, 3, 4 years ago, it was all about the cloud, and it was all about, mobile communication, social media. And you know what? 3, 4, 5 years from now, it'll be about something else, right? Who cares whether it's blockchain or IoT or whether it's cloud computing?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, those are all the technological things that support the shift in the way you do business. And that's a response to the velocity of change in the world, which is getting faster and faster all the time. Mm-hmm. So if you're focused on what is digital or what is technology, you've lost the game, right? Because you need to focus on what people are asking for, how you're going to serve them, how you're going to deliver those in an experience that's compelling and makes them want to come back and do more with you. And they don't care about cloud, and they don't care about machine learning, and they don't care about robotics. They care about getting a great experience. And if you can use those things to deliver that, fantastic. And if you use something else, if you use pieces of paper and a pencil, fantastic. No one cares. Unless you're in the IT business. So the truth of the matter is, not only do people not know the difference between digital and IT, but it's actually, they shouldn't care about that difference, but they do way too much. I spend a lot of time with our clients explaining to them that we can bring all those tools to bear on their behalf, but if they don't tell us what they're trying to achieve, none of it will work. If they don't have a strategy and a plan and a customer experience they're trying to create, no tool or technology is going to solve the problem. So get that straight first. Understand what the experiences you're trying to create for your customers. Understand your strategy and your plan to get there, and then you can use digital and technology tools to help support that enablement. But most people don't get that still, and I don't care what industry you're in.
That's true. That's so true. We get caught up in the tools and the tasks, and we forget the big picture. That's very true. In that context, where do you think insurance is?
Look, it's all a spectrum, right? And obviously there are different people and different organizations on different parts of the spectrum. But as a whole, the insurance industry, particularly in Australia, is lagging behind significantly. And part of that's because of circumstance, and part of that's because of the mindset that goes along with insurance, right? And those are two really important distinctions. One is, Australia didn't really go through a GFC in the 2008, 2009 era. And as a result, the financial institutions in this country really didn't go through pain and didn't have to really get tight and get their technology and their experiences designed and delivering, as a well-oiled machine. And as a result, their growth was significant. They really didn't have to do anything. There was no pressure on the insurance industry in Australia. And there hadn't been until the pandemic hit. And it's interesting how seriously that's changing things. But as a result of no urgency to change and the high barriers to entry in the market, it was easier to become a bank than an insurance company. And so as a result, you didn't have a need to change because there was only a few games in town, right? There's 4 or 5 companies in the industry in this region. And, none of them were knocking the cover off the ball in terms of progressive thinking and modern technology or digitization. And so they didn't move very quickly. On top of that, you've got an industry that's prone to risk aversion because it's the nature of the industry is to categorize and reduce risk. And so what was really interesting at IAG, one of the things I was really trying to get across and had some success with this was the difference between the risk you take for your customers and the risk you take in a business. As a business, insurance companies need to be prepared to take a reasonable percentage of risk to grow and move forward. They are not, however, prepared to take that same amount of risk for their customers. And that's fine. Those are 2 different and distinct cases. The problem is in insurance, those got blended together. So your chief risk officer generally ran the business and made all the decisions that led to a lack of innovation or growth or risk. And the problem is that's great when you're talking about your customers' money or their policy or their well-being, but it's not so good when you're talking about investing in the future of an organization that needs to meet those needs in a changing, growing world. And so one of the things that you see is this dichotomy in insurance companies between the risk you take for your customers and the risk you take for your business. And it needs to grow. There needs to be a bigger difference between those 2 things in insurance. And that's why it lags. So between not having urgency or pressure to risk to grow and take risks because of financial security and the culture in insurance pushing back against risk, you've got 2 forces of change being nullified and therefore very little change happening. Ironically, that's really all come to a head now since the pandemic.
With the pandemic.
And now you're seeing everybody being forced to look themselves in the mirror and say, we should have done this years ago.
Years ago, absolutely. Have you read the news about Elon Musk entering insurance?
I haven't. That's a new one.
Yeah, he's just declared, I think, a few weeks ago. Do you expect him to shake up the market globally?
Well, look, I haven't read anything about this, but given the fact that it's Elon Musk and he only does things to shake up markets, I would fully expect him to shake up the market if for no other reason than he wants to shake up the market. Well, look, I think insurance is a funny thing because a lot of people don't realize who's playing in the business, right? In the industry. Apple's one of the biggest insurers in the world, but nobody thinks about them as an insurer. Apple Care, whether it's third-party white label or not, irrelevant. They're selling insurance products probably at a bigger rate than all the Asian insurance companies combined, perhaps more than almost any of the insurance companies. So when you think about experience, Apple really has that down pat. When you think about insurance, nobody puts those 2 things together, but a lot of people buy Apple Care. A lot of people.
They do.
And so they're buying insurance policies on their devices and they're using that insurance policy and it's a great experience for the most part. And as a result, they're changing the way people are comparing their experiences to their life policy or their auto policy or their homeowner's policy. And, somebody like Elon Musk can come in and he has the same passion for the experience that Apple does, and he will shake that up. Really interested. I will look into that and see where he's going.
Look it up. Yeah, it's interesting to see what he's going to do. Do you see a day when people are going to buy all their insurance online?
Well, the short answer is yes, but that's only because I think there's going to be a day when people buy everything online. I don't know how soon that will be, but you also have to remember what online means, right? So you can walk into a bank and still buy something online. You can walk into a clothing store and still buy something online. You can buy online with your phone or at a kiosk or at a register of some sort. So it depends on really what you mean by online. But if you're talking about what we think of today as sitting in front of of a screen, whether it's a mobile or a tablet or a desktop machine. Yeah, I think, like anything else, you could have said 10 years, 20 years ago, people won't be banking online. How could you bank online? You need to see and touch your money. You need to have both. People bank online now significantly. People said that no one would ever put a credit card online. Well, now everybody puts their credit cards online. So yes, everybody will be buying insurance online. However, what I think will change is that they probably won't really be buying insurance on its own. I think insurance more and more becomes bundled as a service into other things. So you don't really necessarily purchase an automobile, but you might buy access to one that comes with insurance. And so you pay for that. And you probably click and collect that online, right? You click it, car's delivered to you, or you go get it or whatever. The same with travel insurance, pretty much you buy a plane ticket and there it is, or you use your credit card to buy, a cruise and suddenly that comes with insurance, right? A lot of credit cards have that now anyway. So I think the idea of unbundled insurance products, it's just, who wants that? It's a grudge purchase as it is. When I buy a house, insurance should just be part of what I buy. When I buy a car, right? And the more we do as a service, and the more we see, in particular in the automotive industry, and when we see, vehicles as a service, I don't want to pay for my fuel separately. I don't want to pay for repairs separately. I don't want to pay for insurance separately. What I want is to pay for transportation. And that should come with everything it needs as a service. So I'll pay one monthly or weekly or daily fee, and I'll get that stuff. So yeah, I think to that extent, more and more insurance will be part of the service bundle, which is more and more be purchased online.
I think that's when people probably get to see the value of what they're buying. Standalone, I think it's very difficult to justify the value by itself. And I think that's a great point that you make.
That's an interesting question. I don't know if people will necessarily see more value or just not see it at all. It becomes transparent, right?
They probably don't even know they bought insurance. Yeah, they probably don't know they bought insurance. Yeah, that could happen. And I wonder when that happens. And I think the whole industry will, what will happen if people are not even aware that this exists? So is that a good thing or a bad thing? From a sales point of view, I think that's a great thing. But from an industry, I don't really know. It's too early days. And for example, if we were to say millennials who grow up not knowing there is even an insurance, would they grow up and want to be in this career? Because
But is it a career to be in insurance, or is it just a career to deliver experiences as part of that? Insurance is one of those things, right? Think about if you went and bought a TV in the 50s or 40s in the US, for example, it didn't come with a warranty.
Yeah, it didn't.
You had to buy that warranty separately, or it just wasn't offered. If it broke, you paid someone to fix it.
Yeah, if I remember, so Sears had something, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so people bundled the warranty now with the product. You don't even think about it. Cars come with warranties, right?
Yeah, yes.
Well, the warranty is a form of insurance. So why wouldn't the auto insurance component, the collision and third-party insurance that is required for most countries, why wouldn't that be bundled in with the warranty and just be one thing, right? People don't think of the warranty as insurance. Nobody thinks of themselves in the warranty industry, but they don't need to. And I don't think people need to associate themselves with the insurance industry. And this is what I was trying to drive at IAG and get people to realize. It's not about being what you think of as insurance. It's about delivering great experiences. And the customer would prefer to just have one thing deliver all its needs, all their needs, than to have to, okay, I got to buy a car, and I got to get insurance, and I got to get fuel, then I got to get repair service. Then why not? Why not just bundle it all together, right? And so many things in the world have sort of evolved that way. I'm quite sure the industry, if it's going to survive in any shape or form, is going to have to kind of adjust to that mentality.
That's a good point. So to kind of wrap it up, Michael, do you have a learning ritual that you kind of do once in a while?
Yeah, it's funny because the pandemic has thrown me off my ritual, and I'm trying to figure out how to get back on it. I used to listen to podcasts to and from work every day. I used to drive to and from work. Now that I'm not going to work, I'm finding it hard to make time to listen to podcasts and keep myself current with things. So I'm finding myself having to block time in my diary to do that. Now, one of the benefits of being where I am, the company I work for has a program called Genome, which is really around creating collective intelligence in the organization. And it's got a phenomenal array of learning materials that you can consume at your own pace. And then we have, collective intelligence means that the learners are also the teachers. So I spend a lot of time doing these video connects, kind of like this, but where I'm teaching somebody about executive presence, or I teach about agile ways of working, or I teach about other topics that I'm on the higher end of experience with. And then other people are teaching me about things that I have less experience with. And so that ritual has become part of my daily sort of life within the organization. And that's I think a benefit of the kind of investment my company puts into learning and the importance it puts on learning. But yeah, other than the podcast that I used to have a pretty vast array of types of podcasts I listen to, everything from tech podcasts.
Want to share with the listeners just one or two of them?
Honestly, my favorite podcast of all is The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. It's a fantastic podcast about critical thinking and analysis. And it helps me in everything I do. It helps me understand how to, tell fact from fiction in a world that's increasingly fiction. It helps me understand how evidence-based thinking helps make better decisions. And I apply that to the consulting that I do every day. And we talk about our scientific method of consulting, where we form hypotheses. We try to validate or invalidate those hypotheses in order to determine whether they're worth investing in. And that's what I teach people when we're consulting, in terms of how to prioritize new opportunities or new initiatives in an organization. So yeah, I find The Skeptic's Guide is terrific. I also read a lot of blogs online like Gizmodo and Daring Fireball and others like that, where I'm really interested in the technology and the trends of how people use technology.
How do you stay motivated, Michael?
It's not really an issue for me. I love what I do, and I love to bend.
Built-in motivation DNA.
Yeah, it's really, and I always. This is kind of something I learned early on. If you're not motivated, find something else to do. Because if you need to get motivated, you're doing the wrong thing.
I could tell that you always had that wonderful smile and always knew that you're always switched on. Yeah, wonderful. What do you want to be remembered for, Michael? I know, and professionally, of course.
Look,
or is it too early for you to start thinking on those lines?
I'd like to think it's too early, but no. The truth is, I want to be remembered as a change agent, somebody who when I showed up, things were different when I left, and for the better. And change is hard. It's the hardest thing humans can do. Changing your mind is it's so counterintuitive to most people. In truly changing your mind, believing in one thing and then having a new set of facts, then believing in something completely different because of those facts, that's really hard for people to digest. And that's what I spend a lot of my time doing, is those mindset shifts, those changing of the mindset. And if people remember me as somebody who came in and made people think differently, and as a result then behave differently, that will make me very happy.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Enjoy it.